Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions, and the portfolio question time this afternoon is net zero and energy and transport. And at question number 1, I call Finlay Carson.
To ask the Scottish Government what support it will provide to ensure that rural communities have access to public transport.
Minister Jim Fairley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government fully recognises the vital role that transport plays in our rural communities. We spend over £2 billion annually to support public transport across Scotland, including direct support to operators and local authorities to help extend the transport network, alongside initiatives to help make transport more affordable for passengers, such as the National Travel Concessionary Schemes. We continue to support the provision of services in rural areas through the Network Support Grant and the bus powers within the Transport Scotland Act 2019 and the funding of Community Transport Association Scotland to support local community transport operators.
Finlay Carson.
I thank the Minister for that response. Given the essential roles that bus plays in rural communities like Galloway and West Dumfries, what urgent steps will the Minister take to address the collapse of services and potential job losses following the withdrawal of Stagecoach? Current funding models like the Network Support Grant and Concessionary Fare Scheme fail to meet the unique needs of rural authorities. So will the Minister consider reforming these models, including directly funding bodies like Swestrands to better support local transport and unlock wider social and economic benefits?
Minister.
I absolutely accept the point that Finlay Carson is making. However, the local authority are the responsible body for providing the bus services in his area. But I also take on board the job losses that could well come out of this. But my hope is that between Stagecoach and Dumfries and Galloway Council there will be provision made as this process goes on. As far as the funding is concerned, again, it's for local authorities to decide how they're going to spend that, but the Scottish Government spends about £2 billion a year in supporting transport.
Supplementary, Rosa Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister will be aware that the MV Lord of the Isles was off again this week, leaving the people of South Uist again without any ferry service. The Scottish Government announced a resilience fund. Can the Minister tell me whether or not the people of South Uist, bearing costs for this cancellation this week, will they be able to apply for funding to compensate for that?
Minister.
Yeah, the member knows, as the member has just pointed out, that there is a resilience fund there, and that is still in the process of being developed and decided how that will be distributed. And as soon as that is known, then either myself or the Cabinet Secretary will let the member know.
Supplementary, Liam MacArthur.
Thank you. Reflecting the concerns raised by Finlay Carson, I can advise the Minister that Orkney Disability Forum are partnering with the local council to pilot a new service in South Ronaldsay where no public transport currently exists. A small electric vehicle, less than 9 passengers, has been bought, which can operate on a Section 19 permit, but not as a scheduled service on Section 22 permits. As a result, they're ineligible for the Network Support Grant and passengers can't use the concessionary cards. So will the Minister take action to ensure the regulation does not prevent important initiatives tailored to meet the specific transport needs of rural and island communities from accessing the funding that they need?
Minister.
Well, the regulations that the member is talking about is actually out with the powers of the Scottish Government. But if he wants to give me the details, I'm more than happy to have a look at them with him and see if there's anything else that we can advise to do.
Minister Elena Whittam.
In my constituency of Carrickcumnock and Doon Valley, reliable rural bus services are absolutely vital. Does the Minister agree that it is wholly regrettable that the privately run business Stagecoach, on whom my constituents rely, has failed to broker a deal with their employees over the strike period, not only to ensure they are receiving equitable pay in accordance with fair work principles, but so such fragile transportation links are resumed? Many constituents across rural Ayrshire, who in the main support the call of the drivers, are now cut off from access to health appointments, attending work and accessing food, the basics that we all take for granted. This simply cannot continue, and I ask that the Scottish Government works with local areas urgently to create sustainable bus services.
Minister.
While I absolutely sympathise, the member will be aware that Scottish ministers simply cannot intervene directly in these matters. We absolutely recognise the critical importance of bus services, particularly in the more rural areas, which, as the member rightly points out, provide that lifeline service for things such as access to healthcare, education and work alongside the social inclusion. Now, I appreciate and I sympathise with the disruption caused to all the communities affected by this process, and I of course encourage Stagecoach and the unions to work together quickly to resolve this issue as soon as possible and to come to a fair and sustainable agreement which not only supports the employees but also ensures the long-term viability of these important services in the area.
And supplementary, Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As West Trans and the Fries and Galloway Council have responsibility for local bus services, clearly the scope for the Government to directly intervene is limited, particularly given a tender process is still ongoing. But can I ask the Minister what consideration could be given to providing technical and professional support from the Scottish Government to local transport authorities to equip them with the capacity to ensure areas like Dumfries and Galloway have a vibrant and sustainable bus network, regardless of the commercial decisions taken elsewhere?
Minister.
Members are absolutely right to point out that the Scottish Government cannot directly intervene, but my officials in Transport Scotland are absolutely there to give the technical support and help that the local authority may need in order to progress things.
Question number 2 has been withdrawn. Question number 3, Ben McPherson.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on planned capital investment in the Seafield wastewater treatment works, including the No Regrets funding commitment, and what consideration is being given to further investment after the PFI contract ends to meet the needs of population growth, climate change and the Edinburgh waterfront development.
Minister Alistair Allen.
The Seafield wastewater treatment works is a PFI contract awarded in 1999 and contractual obligations for its delivery and operations lie with the PFI company until 2029. The contract is funded by Scottish Water. Some £34 million has been invested in Seafield since 2011, and in 2020 Scottish Water committed a further £10 million to provide additional sludge storage capacity to improve odour performance. Scottish Water remains committed to delivering this improvement for customers and will keep community representatives updated through the existing Seafield stakeholders group. Scottish Water is at an early stage in developing its plans to ensure a smooth transition of operational responsibility once the PFI contract expires.
Ben McPherson.
I thank the Minister for that answer because for many years people in the north east of Edinburgh unfortunately did experience unpleasant odours at times, and while the situation is much better than it was in the past, this still does happen. When I took the chair of the stakeholder group in 2016, I was determined to make improvement and deliver the necessary investment. It is unfortunate that the No Regrets funding investment has been delayed due to wider economic circumstances, but it's reassuring to hear the Minister clarify that the Government and Scottish Water are absolutely committed to that No Regrets investment, and also that there is already planning underway to meet the needs of our growing city and to make sure that the plant becomes a state-of-the-art facility in the 21st century once the PFI contract ends. I'd be grateful if the Minister could undertake that in the months and years ahead, ministers will continue to engage with myself as the local MSP and chair of the stakeholder group, along with community organisations.
Minister.
Well, firstly, I would recognise the efforts that the member has made as constituency MSP in raising this with Government and with others. Scottish Water remains committed to delivering this investment through its PFI partner. I understand that delays relate to the difficulty for the PFI company in procuring a suitable supplier in the busy UK marketplace. Obviously, the member will know that PFI was not the creation of this Government, but of previous ones. I certainly understand that Scottish Water has confirmed the Seafield stakeholder group to them that the procurement strategy has been revisited, however, accordingly. I am sure the member will continue to raise these issues assiduously with future ministers.
Question number 4, Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the recent report, Energy Transition 41st Survey by the Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce, which reportedly demonstrates that the UK is losing the supply chain and skills necessary to deliver net zero.
Minister Alistair Allen.
Well, ensuring a just transition for Scotland's oil and gas sector is at the heart of our green industrial strategy. These supply chains and workers will deliver on net zero and unlock growth. We are supporting businesses, including through our £500 million 10-year Just Transition Fund, our investment of up to £500 million over 5 years in offshore wind will leverage private investment and anchor Scotland's supply chain. A just transition depends also on UK Government action across reserved areas, including providing clarity on the fiscal and regulatory regimes for oil and gas and support for the Acorn carbon capture and storage project.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for that answer. Aberdeen and indeed Scotland have both the highly skilled workforce and the natural resources to become the world leader in net zero, but independent experts are increasingly warning this ambition is at risk due to UK Government energy policies. Does the Minister agree that Westminster cannot continue to stand in the way of Scotland's just transition, and what is the Scottish Government doing to secure Scotland's economic growth and thriving energy sector?
Minister.
Well, as the member rightly points out, both governments have a role in this, and I am pleased that I believe even in the minutes before I got to my feet, there was some discussion in Westminster about Acorn again and a commitment to some part of that. But we need to have timescales and funding allocated for the whole project in order to have confidence that this will go ahead. But clearly both governments have a role to play, and as I've indicated, the Scottish Government has not been shy to play ours.
And supplementary, Douglas Lund.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We've now been waiting over 2 years for an updated energy strategy. Now, this survey has revealed that 90% of firms believe the absence of a Scottish Government energy strategy is damaging investor confidence. So will the Cabinet Secretary wake up and listen to the businesses in the North East?
Minister.
Well, as I indicated just now, we have not been waiting for a plan, important as a plan undoubtedly is, in order to take action. I mentioned the £500 million investment over 10 years. I mentioned the many actions that the Government is taking. The member is quite right to point to the real anxiety that exists to make sure that the North East has the economic future that it deserves and the just transition it deserves. But the reason I pointed also to the UK Government in this is because, for instance, the Energy Profits Levy is something that is continually raised by the industry in the North East as something that is making their life more difficult at this point, and that's why we raise it with the UK Government.
Question number 5 has been withdrawn. At question number 6, I call Claire Baker.
To ask the Scottish Government when the statutory guidance for local bus services franchising will be published.
Minister Jim Fair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I can confirm that the guidance is currently undergoing internal review prior to the final engagement with key parties on the franchising process, including the Competition and Markets Authority and the Office of the Traffic Commissioner. Once that process is completed, it is my intention to share the draft guidance with the NZEC Committee along with the affected parties, including local transport authorities, regional transport partnerships and the operators' representatives prior to the finalisation of the formal publication. The final timescales for publication will depend on the capacity of those stakeholders to consider and to engage with the draft document.
I thank the Minister for this response, but I am disappointed as the Government did previously commit to issuing the guidance by the end of last year. But 6 months on from that deadline, we're still waiting, and from the Minister's explanation this afternoon, we can expect to be waiting quite a while till we get to the final stage. The length of time required and the complexity of the overall franchising process in Scotland has been raised as a concern. And in comparison with other parts of the UK, the process in Scotland is much longer with additional requirements. So is the Scottish Government considering ways to speed up and simplify the process? And have any lessons been learned from elsewhere, including the potential removal of technical barriers?
Minister.
No, I take the point on board that Claire Baker makes to me that there was a view to try and get the guidance out sooner, but we did focus on getting the franchising legislation through, and that's what has taken up a considerable amount of time. But what that means is that the guidance that is coming forward has still got to go through that internal review process. We still have to be able to have those discussions with all the stakeholders and the people that will be affected by it, and we will get it done. As soon as we've got it done, I will present that to the NZEC Committee, and it will be there for further scrutiny.
And supplementary, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of my small island bus operators is concerned about the potential impact of bus franchising on their businesses. The uncertainties already make it more difficult for them to secure investment. They worry that the Strathclyde Partnership for Transport is not considering the impact of franchising on small island operators, with the model appearing to favour larger companies. What reassurance can the Minister provide that the unique challenges of Scottish island communities and their local bus enterprises will be considered.
Minister.
Well, I would say that it's not just franchising that local authorities have available to them. The 2019 Act gives local authorities any number of different ways to look at. But if the member wants to provide me with the exact details of the concerns that he has, I'm more than happy to pick that up with him.
Supplementary, Graeme Simpson.
Research from the Get Glasgow Moving campaign suggests there will not be a single franchised bus in the Strathclyde region until 2030. I think they're being optimistic, actually. That will be 11 years after the Transport Act was passed. So what is the Scottish Government doing to expedite the process?
Minister.
The member is well aware this process is going to be long and rigorous, and the point that Claire Baker talked about removing some of the issues that are making that difficult, I presume that what we're talking about is the panel section, but that panel is going to be absolutely vital to ensure that there's a rigour in the process of that franchising, and I think it's only right that we have a rigorous process to make sure that the franchising is done properly, and it allows us to make sure we've got a transport system that works.
Question number 7, Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what the implications and consequences of not achieving net zero by 2045 would be for Scotland, including the economy.
Minister Alistair Allen.
Well, as I know the member appreciates, net zero offers huge economic opportunities for Scotland, and the changes needed will put money into people's pockets, improve health and well-being and protect our planet for the future generations. Net zero is a moral imperative and an opportunity to support future economic development. Workers must be at the heart of a just transition. Our approach will maximise benefits of climate action and minimise impacts for workers and communities. Our next climate change plan will outline the costs and benefits of policies supported by just transition plans, and our national adaptation plan is driving our response to climate impacts.
Maurice Golden.
I thank the Minister for that answer, and I concur. The consequences of not meeting net zero would drive farmers out of business, destroy the rural economy and put our food security at risk. Does the Minister agree with me it is common sense to meet net zero by 2045 and that it would be utter madness and an act of national self-harm to not attempt to do so?
Minister.
Strongly concur with what the member mentions there, and I would indeed agree with what he says about the essential nature of reaching net zero, not just to save our planet, as if that was a small consideration, but also for our businesses, for whom the cost of adaptation and the cost of coping with climate change will become increasingly expensive as we move into the future if we don't tackle this problem as we go. So I would very warmly concur with what the member has just said there.
And supplementary, Sarah Boyack.
Minister, we know that urban and rural communities across Scotland are now at risk from extreme weather and the impact of the climate emergency, with homes and businesses now actually at risk. So what is the Scottish Government's plan to deliver the sustainable jobs now we need locally, both to increase our resilience but also to reduce our emissions? And just give the example of manufacturing renewables, and to repeat the question asked previously, when will we see the energy strategy and the Just Transition plan to give the certainty developers and supply chain businesses urgently need to deliver that sustainable low-carbon economy?
Minister.
Well, as mentioned, some of the plans are dependent on something happening in another sphere, and that is in the courts in terms of UK government interaction with the courts, and so we have to await some of that information. However, as I indicated previously, that fact does not keep us from action. So, for instance, just looking at the north east of Scotland, the £125 million that we've allocated to Aberdeen and the north east economy, or, for instance, the Just Transition Fund for the North East and Murray, we've allocated £75 million to that and £125 million to the Aberdeen economy. We're committed to putting real resources and real effort as a government into making sure that the transition is a truly just one.
At question number 8, I call Lawrence Slater.
to ask the Scottish Government what its plans are for bringing the requisite regulations to fully implement the Heat Network Scotland Act 2021, including the special rights and powers which the Act foresees.
Ms. Slater, can I ask you to resume your seat? When you first read out the question, it wasn't reflecting the language that's on the business bulletin. Could somebody perhaps give Ms. Slater a copy of the business bulletin? Thank you very much, and could you perhaps start again for the record? Thank you.
My sincere apologies, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide further details of its plans for bringing forward the requisite regulations to fully implement the Heat Networks Scotland Act 2021, including the special rights and powers that the Act foresees for heat network developers.
Minister Alistair Allen.
We will provide more detail on the next steps with this Act alongside the introduction of the Heat and Buildings Bill. However, I can assure Parliament that we intend to deliver the rights and powers detailed in Part 6 of the Heat Network Scotland Act and are working to ensure we do this in a way that avoids duplication with GB-wide authorisations so as to minimise the regulatory burden on the heat network sector in Scotland.
Lorna Slater.
Can the Minister give any update onto the timescale for this? Because this is a fully devolved matter. Why do we need to wait for the UK Government? This was legislated for in 2021 and we're still waiting for this secondary legislation. Can the Minister give us a clear timeline and intention for completing this work?
Minister.
In terms of the Heat and Buildings Bill, which I mentioned, that is a commitment to legislate in year 5 of this Parliament, in the course of this Parliament. In terms of the points that were made about earlier legislation, it's also worth saying, I think, that we're now exploring introducing an opt-in rights and powers licence via the Heat and Buildings Bill, which is akin to the installation and maintenance licence being introduced in the rest of GB. And that's because much of the provisions of Part 1 of the Act, like financial well-being, will be covered by Great Britain-wide authorisation. More detail will follow in the introduction of the Heat and Buildings Bill, but I can assure the member that is coming in this year of Parliament.
And supplementary, Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. When the Greens were in government, they saw a massive expansion in incineration capacity, which is used to power heat networks, particularly in Scandinavia. Burn, baby burn, some might say. What is the Scottish Government's view on using renewables to power these heat networks as opposed to burning stuff?
Minister.
Well, I think the helpful thing about many heat networks, as we've seen in other parts of Europe, is them moving from burning stuff, as the member puts it, to other forms of power. My officials are working jointly with the UK Government, commissioning guidance that will look at the very issue the member mentions of waste heat. But also we are looking at how to ensure that the Heat and Buildings Bill incentivises heat networks in the future which will be renewably powered.
And a very brief supplementary from Ms Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Don't we need to actually support local authorities to work together to deliver those low-carbon heat networks? Because they're actively discussing it now, and we've got such a huge excess of electricity. Isn't now the time for the Scottish Government to step in and help them get there?
Minister.
I'm not sure I would characterise the situation going into the future as being a huge excess of electricity, given the electrification of the country that is taking place. But I understand the point the member is making about ensuring that different local authority areas work together. We are seeking to do that. We are doing that in the part of the world that the member represents, and we will do it elsewhere in the country.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes portfolio questions on net zero and energy and transport. Point of order, Dr Lumsden.
In the portfolio questions we've just had, 2 SNP members have withdrawn questions, meaning that other members do not have a chance to question the government. One of the questions would have been to ask about the 80 million committed for Acorn by the Scottish Government and when that would be forthcoming. So can you advise if there's anything that can be done to ensure that members who put themselves forward to ask a question actually ask it?
I thank Mr Lumsden for his contribution. As a general rule, members will withdraw for a number of reasons or not lodge for a number of reasons. It may interest the member in the instant case to note that one of the members is not well and the other member has a special dispensation to participate in a committee which is meeting now at the same time as the Parliament is meeting. I hope that assists the member. Thank you. Excuse me, Mr Carson, have you got something further to say to that point of order, or you just want to mumble from a sedentary position? I have stated what the position is, and I hope that that is accepted by all members in the chamber. Thank you. We will now move on to the next item of business,